appreciate that. So, Jordan, let's go ahead and get into tonight's first topic, and I think we'll start on the recruiting realm tonight, man. It has been quite the week for the Clemson Tigers. But before we get into the junior day and all that, let's get into a quick recruiting update for the 2024 class. I wanted to start with quarterback Ethan Anderson. He committed to Clemson as a preferred walk-on today, actually.
Yep.
He's out of Greenville, South Carolina, 6'2", 185 pounds, had a pretty decent senior season. And although he's not your five-star quarterback that those out there would get super excited about and be like, man, we landed a big fish here, he does add depth to a quarterback room that we have already mentioned several times this offseason lacks depth, right? So you got Cade Klubnik, a very young Chris Vizina, coming off of his redshirt freshman year. And then you got another walk-on in Trent Pierman. And then in case of emergency, break glass player/coach, right? So he will add much-needed depth to a room should disaster strike this 2024 season. So what are your thoughts first on Ethan Anderson? What kind of quarterback is he? Do you think he's a good addition to the 2024 roster? And what kind of player is he?
Yeah, I from the limited video and film that I've seen of Ethan, I mean, I think he honestly looks the part of a quality. I don't think he's a guy you will ever expect to play here or anything like that. But I do like some of it. It seems like this staff, when they evaluate these walk-on quarterbacks, they like to go for some of the more, the guys that can make plays off platform, the guys that can scramble around, they improvise. That's kind of what Ethan Anderson was this year. And statistically, the numbers back it up. He threw for over 3,000 yards, threw for 40 touchdowns for JL Man this year. He's kind of a baller. That's kind of when I watch him. I mean, he's not an otherworldly arm talent. So, I mean, I don't like I said, I don't expect him to play here, but in any significant role, but it's nice it's a guy that you need to have in the room. Every program needs to have in the room as far as your walk-ons are concerned. And yeah, there are definitely worse guys out there you could have gotten. So really interested to kind of see, how he kind of fits into that whole quarterback equation, but definitely don't expect him to be a major depth piece, but or a person that, Clemson will eventually have to rely on.
Yeah, let's hope he doesn't become, barring some sort of amazing, unexpected transformation where he just comes out of nowhere, and becomes that guy. Let's hope we don't have to see him play significant snaps, especially in the 2024 season. So I think it's a good depth piece. Obviously, you mentioned the great senior season he had. I mean, 40 touchdown passes. I mean, that's pretty insane. I don't really care where you play, that's still pretty impressive. 61% completion percentage. So obviously a guy that can go out there and make plays if called upon. So good depth piece for Clemson. But again, hopefully we don't have to see too much of him unless it's in some blowout mop-up duty in the 2024 season. So good get for the Tigers. Let's go ahead and move on to the 2025 recruiting class. And those of you that do not know, we had our Elite Junior Day this past Saturday, had a big host of guys that were recruiting for the 2025 cycle in town. Star-studded roster, heavy on the offensive line side of things. It was clear that there was an effort made to crack into this offensive line recruiting cycle with a bang early. If you guys remember back a year ago, we had 0 offensive line recruits at this point in time in the recruiting cycle. We actually didn't get our first offensive line recruit until way into July. And then we didn't get any more until basically signing day, early signing day in December. So Matt Luke comes in. Thomas Austin is out as offensive line coach. Everybody knows Dabo Swinney brought in Matt Luke. One of the big reasons that he brought in Matt Luke was his ability to recruit. And I mean, he's hit the ground running. He has started with a
Oh, yeah.
bang at Clemson. He is flexing his prowess on the recruiting trail, and it started early this Saturday. We didn't find out till Sunday, but they committed on the spot to Clemson, and that is offensive tackle Jalen Beckley. We talked about him a little bit last week. He's out of Addison, Texas. 6'3", 290-pound offensive tackle. Then you got four-star Braden Jacobs out of Buford, Georgia. Big get for the Tigers right here, man. 6'7", 310 pounds. Massive individual. And those two guys join Eason Ware out of Lynchburg, Virginia, that committed earlier in the cycle for Clemson. So 3 offensive linemen already early on in the month of February. They're probably going to take at least one more lineman, possibly 2 more, if the right guy commits. If you know who I'm talking about, it's possibly 2 more. But what's your kind of take on Matt Luke's ability, the ability that he's shown to recruit, and then more importantly, let's talk a little bit about Jalen Beckley and Brandon Jacobs and just who these guys are and how excited Clemson fans should be about landing these guys, especially this early in the cycle.
I mean, yeah, with Matt Luke, just the amount of, I mean, first of all, when you just look at the names that Clemson was able to attract along the offensive line just for this junior day in general. I mean, obviously the big names were David Sanders and Mason Short, but we talked about Jalen Beckley and Braden Jacobs, who ended up committing, but you also had Mal Waldrop out of Alabama and Chauncey Gooden. And so, 2 more blue chip offensive line talent. Like I can't remember a junior day really ever that had this much talent on the Clemson on the offensive line, like just all at one time. It's kind of been a revelation just to see. It's like, wow, it's amazing what happens when you have, a proven recruiter and guy with a proven track record to come and sell Clemson, because it's like, wow, why weren't we doing this earlier? Why didn't we have a guy like this earlier? But that's obviously lamenting the past. And it shows. And the recruits, I've followed what they've said and their social media. He's a very, very active guy on social media. On Twitter, he's constantly retweeting recruits. He's putting out pictures when he's visiting their high schools, and he's taking selfies in front of their locker and sending them with a funny face on it. He's really funny. It's really cool. I know there were a lot of questions when Clemson first made this hire, but man, Matt Luke, I mean, if you remember when he walked away from Georgia, he cited, kind of the burnout of recruiting and just the way the sport was at. And, it was kind of wearing down on him. But would he be ready to just jump back into it? And I think the answer is a resounding yes. I mean, he's back like he never left almost. So, man, just what he's done so far in this cycle, and especially not just attracting guys, but closing on guys, has been really, really impressive. And he's put Clemson in some good position for some of the uncommitted guys left on the board. So really exciting. And then with the 2 commits, I'll start with Jalen Beckley. He's a guy that I think he's listed at offensive tackle. I think he's more, when I watch him, he seems more of a tweener type. I could totally see him playing guard here, and knowing how Clemson cross trains their offensive linemen, that's kind of something that could be on the table for him.
Mm-hmm.
But he's a mover, and that's kind of what Clemson has been going off after this cycle. It's been a slow build to try to beef up this offensive line and the makeup of this room, and I think Jalen Beckley is a guy that I think he could play either spot. So I think that's the kind of versatility you want. And I think he could play both positions pretty well. And then Braden Jacobs, obviously NFL legacy. If you are a if you're a Falcons fan, you probably remember his father, Brandon Jacobs. Uh, he is a massive, massive human being. Uh, I saw a picture. I don't know if you saw it, but I saw a picture of him standing next to Dexter Lawrence, and he made Dexter Lawrence look like he was like a regular guy. Like it made him look like I don't even know. Um, it was pretty just shocking to see. I was like, man, we Clemson never really gets guys that big. I mean, you have like really other than Flapjack, Zach Owens, you don't really have guys of that size on the line, and so and it definitely shows on tape. I mean, he is a massive, massive human being, and I think he's a guy that is definitely could. I think he still has some developing to do. I think at times this year at Buford, he struggled at times, just kind of playing with his weight, because I think he's one of those guys that's still trying to figure out his body.
Yep.
But the frame, the size, the measurables, I think they're all there. I really like this take, and excited to see what he can do and what he eventually becomes when he becomes a Tiger. Assuming he signs. Obviously, nothing is set in stone yet. But
Right. Yeah.
so I really like these two guys. Really excited about their prospects, and just the overall makeup of this offensive line class so far is really exciting. Along with Easton Ware. So yeah, just what a job by Matt Luke. It just knocked this junior day out of the park. We've never had this much momentum. I couldn't say. Already having 11 commits, by the 1st
Yeah.
of February is pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane, honestly. I mean, we have 11 hard commits right now. As of February 1st, 2024, it's the number 3 class in the country, which, that doesn't mean a whole lot until you start getting later in the cycle. But I mean, it's truly impressive what Clemson has been able to do on the recruiting trail early on in this recruiting class. You can tell that there's a renewed sense of urgency with that coaching staff, and the way that they are recruiting this cycle. They are really going after guys. And those are turning into early commitments, which is really good. I mean, you kind of went in on all of these offensive linemen and what they're going to mean for Clemson once they finally don that pall on their helmet. But 2 4-star guys, and then Jalen Beckley. By the time it's all said and done, he's probably going to be a 3 4-star guy as well once he finally gets rated by 247. He hasn't been rated yet by 247, but
Yeah.
I think he's been rated by On3 already, and
Yeah,
he's
I think he's a 4-star on
four
3.
4-star with On3.
I
So
think on Rivals too, but
yeah, so
go check on that.
once 247 gets around to rating him, I'm sure he'll be probably a high 3 4-star type guy. So I mean, you're looking at 3 4-star offensive lineman commitments before the calendar turned February, which is absolutely impressive. And believe me, Matt Luke is not done in this cycle. I can't wait to see what he continues to do for the rest of this recruiting cycle for the offensive line. I truly do. I've said this in the past, but again, I will reiterate that Dabo Sweeney absolutely got the right dude for the job, and you can absolutely tell. He is having no issues selling the Clemson brand and bringing in high-level recruits. But with all of that hype and all of that love that we just gave to the offensive line, they were not the only guys that got a commitment out of the Elite Junior Day on Saturday. Defensive tackle Isaiah Campbell out of Durham, North Carolina, 6'4", 260 pounds, 4-star guy, commits to Clemson heading out of the Junior Day. Ohio State got on him late. Tried to delay his commitment. It did not work, and he is a hard commit to the Tigers. What a get for Clemson. What was your thoughts? I know we talked about a couple of these guys heading into the Elite Junior Day about guys that could possibly commit. He was a name that came up that he could, if things went right on the Elite Junior Day visit, he could possibly be persuaded to make an earlier decision than he was planning. And obviously that was the case. So what are your thoughts on Isaiah Campbell and what he's going to mean to this elite Clemson defensive tackle group that he's going to join when he becomes a Tiger officially?
Yeah, this is a massive get, and I can't. I don't think I can stress it enough. The staff loves him. They, as far as like recruits, just in general, regardless of position, they had Isaiah. I know they had Isaiah Campbell, very near the top of the list. If David, if he might have been the number one guy on the board if David Sanders didn't exist.
Right.
That's how highly they think of him, and this was a huge get for a lot of reasons. Just incredibly talented football player. First of all, I would be surprised if he doesn't get a bump. He has a good rating right now on a lot of the services. I know by 24/7, I think he's a top 70-ish to top 80 recruit. I expect that to go up. I think he's closer to a 5-star talent than anything. I think he's a guy that is still that hasn't even filled out his frame yet, and that's the scary thing. But extremely dominant on tape. That's really what jumps out to me. And he's playing at, he projects to be an interior guy. And he's kind of, I mean, he's not even, I think he's only 265 pounds right now.
Yeah.
I think I totally could see him putting on 35-ish pounds and keeping a lot of that same explosion and power and athleticism. I really do. And so I think this is a really big get. You got him over he had a lot of suitors. He had his choice of guys, but it felt like he kind of knew where he wanted to be. And that's just another big get for Nick Eason. He continues to show why he's one of the best recruiters, if not the best recruiter on the staff. And so, yeah, this is a big get. And, to pair with Ari Watford and Amari Adams in this class, you're shaping up to have another strong defensive line class. And, they're not looking to they're looking to kind of get load up a little bit on this class because there will be some guys leaving after this year. So you're already off to a great start. You got the number one player in the state of South Carolina, the number one player in the state of Virginia, and the top 10 player in the state of North Carolina.
There you go, man. It
can't
really go any better than that before the calendar rolls to February. I mean, Nick Eason is absolutely killing it, has been killing it since he got to Clemson. He's one of those coaches that has an infectious personality, right? Players just want to play for him. I mean, I remember seeing, this time last year, him doing mat drills with the guys, way in the summertime last year, doing mat drills with the guys, putting on a helmet and some cleats, and them guys kind of calling him out like, you're not going to do it. And he went through every rep with them. So who doesn't want to play for a coach like that? You spoke to his ability on the recruiting trail. Absolute elite coach. Pay him whatever he wants to stay, please, Clemson. But good things happening on the recruiting trail for the Clemson Tigers as far as the 2025 cycle goes. It's kind of crazy how all this recruiting stuff works, man. The 2024 cycle technically is not officially in the books yet, but it's already on to 2025 and worrying about what's next and reloading the roster for that year. So it's a year-round thing with this recruiting thing. It's hard to keep up with as a fan. I can't imagine what it's like to be a college coach and keep up with all this stuff, man. Along with your coaching duties and your meetings and your film watching and all the other ancillary stuff that we don't even know about. It's got to be pretty insane, but the Clemson coaching staff seems to be doing an elite job closing out that 2024 cycle, and then they just exploded on the scene for this 2025 cycle. So couldn't be more excited. Hopefully the momentum stays throughout the summer. Everybody knows we got that big recruiting weekend coming up in June. That's where you would typically, you talked earlier a little bit about, bringing in all these big time offensive line recruits for Elite Junior Day and how that's kind of a new thing for Clemson. This is that list that you saw. That would normally be like the guys that you would really be focusing to try to get to that recruiting weekend, that big recruiting weekend that we do in June. But they're already tapping into it early, and I'm sure a lot of those guys are going to be back, hopefully, for that big June recruiting weekend. So tides are starting to turn in our favor, it appears.
Absolutely, and I can't remember. I mean, this feels honestly. I mean, we remember the string of commitments that Clemson has gotten the past two cycles when they came out of that June official visit weekend. You're setting yourself up to have possibly an even bigger splash, just because you've already just because of the momentum that you've brought from this junior day.
Mm-hmm.
I think I think one of the biggest things, especially last cycle, for this staff was the ability to close just wasn't there at times,
Mm-hmm.
and especially on the offensive line. And you're seeing the exact opposite. I can't remember the last time Clemson had 11 commits before before we even hit spring ball. Like that's pretty wild. And so I'm really excited about how this class is shaping up. And I think Clemson has put themselves in a really good position for a lot of guys, not just on the lines of scrimmage, but other positions as well. So, yeah, well, we'll see how those returns go. It's still, I don't want to, project too much because a lot of things can happen. But this staff, if I had to give a grade for how this version of the Clemson coaching staff is recruiting so far, they got to get an A. So,
yeah,
we're feeling really good.
Yeah, early returns could not be any better. So, here's to continuing that momentum through the summer. It's not easy. Sometimes in recruiting you get these big type weekends like Clemson just got, and it's hard to sustain that over the entire recruiting cycle for the class. But again, Clemson's got some big recruiting stuff coming up. Obviously, I already talked about the big recruiting weekend in June. So, I truly believe this coaching staff is going to keep the momentum going. I don't think we have any reason to suspect anything different. So, couldn't be more excited. Great things happening on the recruiting trail. And John Sarian's got a question there that I saw you highlight. You want to get to that real quick?
Yeah, sure. I started. I mean, I didn't know if I was going to wait for the listener questions to address it, but since we're already here, I might as well.
Yeah, we're already talking recruiting. So
yeah, John asked, "What's the next linebacker class looking like? Is Chase Taylor really underrated just yet?" From what I understand, this linebacker class, I really don't expect to be more than one or two kids, just because they feel like they have, they kind of the reason they backfilled, last cycle was because of some of the expected attrition, and so now you're at a point where Barrett Carter is the only guy that they really expect to leave after next season. So your numbers aren't really, they really only want to hold 8. That's kind of the target number of scholarship linebackers. And so, with Barrett Carter leaving, that means you're probably only looking at one guy. He mentions Chase Taylor, who recently got an offer. From what I understand, the priority right now is 4-star linebacker Jaden Harmon. That's the guy that they really like. I think he's listed as a safety on some sites, but Clemson likes him as a linebacker. That's what they want. They expect him to play outside linebacker, probably kind of that Sam linebacker role that Clemson has had for years. So from what I understand, Jaden Harmon is the guy. Chase Taylor is a guy that they are probably going to keep on the back burner. And see what happens there. But I think Jaden Harmon is the guy, but it wouldn't surprise me if they took both. But they I think they want to stay at 8. So I don't expect more than one or two guys in this class at linebacker.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, man. Well, that kind of does it for our recruiting update. A lot of guys came this weekend. I know we spent quite a bit of time on the Elite Junior Day and the guys that committed, but we had a ton of guys on campus that did not commit that I think Clemson made quite a bit of headway with. Mason Short, obviously David Sanders, I think is a guy that we kind of got at least in the conversation with. I mean, Brett Chatterbaugh, I think, we could be, doing something there. I know Jordan Young there was an article with him on 247 where he was talking very glowingly of his visit.
He's from my neck of the woods. Shout out to Monroe.
Yeah. So tons of guys coming out talking very highly at Clemson, which is normal, leaving out of a recruiting weekend with the school. But I do think we made some headways with those guys, and I think we'll continue to build some momentum and possibly hear some good news as we keep going through spring, and then as we get into summer and all that kind of stuff. So more to come on the recruiting front. Me and Jordan will keep you posted